parents, the child goes to the teacher who will guide that child.
What do you mean by external moral authority? You use that expression a lot.
Materialism has to do with when you are
Hello, it's great to have all of you back here in the studio with me. As you know, this is a course in values and spirituality that you're listening to. I have Sister Denise with me in the studio, the author of 8 books on this subject, and right now we are covering the subject entitled Concept of Values, which falls under page 25 of the first model. Sister Denise, great to have you back again.
Thank you.
We discussed this in an earlier episode, but in this context I'd like to take it up again. Is one of the aims of this course to create an ideal society, a society that has virtues and values as its priority, as opposed to what it is now?
People are very judgmental, and they believe, which is why this course exists, that if you teach people about these things, then it will change the society. And when you say teach people about it, there's different interpretations. Usually teach people means oblige them to accept certain ideas and then try to enforce that. Here, what I'm trying to do with this course is to inspire people to think and to feel, so that they, in and of themselves, want to act in a way that corresponds to who and what they really are on the inside. And that doesn't have to be enforced. It's just a matter of sensitizing people and inspiring. And I think if you do that, obviously there's going to be a big change. And I think it begins with one and it spreads.
I like looking at things from a realistic perspective. I have a friend who says to me often, I know it is wrong for me to get angry at my children. However, I do so on a daily basis. And one hears, and you can see it within yourself as well as other people, that to understand how you should be and to actually be it is 2 different things. Does this course, apart from expanding one's understanding, does it help you implement what your values are? The many, Sister Denise, fall short in the implementation department.
You know, one thing that might be useful is to replace the word values with the word principles in this case, following the example that you gave. If a person says to themselves and beyond, my principle is to maintain control of my emotions, is my principle. If I break my principle, it's not because it's wrong, it's because I'm weak. That makes the whole difference.
Yes, so where do you get your strength from? Who do you get it from?
Well, obviously, if you are weak and you're weak spiritually, then you get your strength from a spiritual source, which we may call God or the Supreme Being. But if you say it is wrong to get angry, it doesn't actually have much meaning.
Okay, so what you are basically saying is that in order to accumulate an arsenal of values, virtues and principles, you cannot do this by yourself. You need to draw on a source higher than you.
It's really not about an arsenal of values, virtues and principles. The issue at hand is nobody has realized that the problem is not a matter of being right or wrong. The problem is a matter of whether you have power or you don't. And I could say it's really broadly accepted across the whole world that the human soul is fundamentally oriented towards doing the wrong thing. And this is a fallacy. And I'm trying to challenge that fallacy and say no, the fundamental orientation of all people across the board is purity, peace, power, love, bliss, the original qualities of the spirit. When you act in a way that is not like that, the only reason is not because you're bad or you're doing something wrong or something like that. It is simply that you are spiritually depleted and weak, and there is no point in punishing a person for being weak. It doesn't cause them to become strong. What you need to do, I feel, is to make a person realize the only reason I do something not right is because I'm not strong enough to do the right thing. That idea has to come in. Then if I'm not strong enough, that means I have to go to the source and get strength. And these two actions are absolutely brand new for people to realize. You know, people say what I'm talking about is not new. It's very new.
In what way?
Because everybody thinks you do wrong because you're bad. Nobody thinks you do wrong because you have run out of power. And that what you need is to take strength, and then you will automatically and naturally do actions that correspond to your original qualities. So the action that has to be done is individuals must sit and draw power. And that means meditation. You can call it by a number of different ways, but if a person, going back to your original example, I know I shouldn't get angry. Instead of that, say, I have decided, I've made a choice to live by a principle of not getting angry, but I'm unable to fulfill my own decision, not because I'm bad, not because I'm wrong, but because I lack power. You see, this is new. People don't know that.
Okay, we'll talk about the accumulation of power at a later stage. I noticed that the term temptation comes up in page 25. Could you tell us more about what that is?
Well, if we look at the sentence, it says, our lives are fraught with temptations, illusions, and negative experiences that prompt each of us to act against our moral conscience. And that was the thinking at that time, 16 years ago. I think now I would say that's an excuse.
Why do you say that? Because
we cannot say that these things prompt us to act against our moral conscience.
Sorry to interrupt you. You're saying the problem is not with what is on the outside, the problem is on the inside.
Yes.
Okay.
What I think we want to say is, I choose to go against myself regularly, and it doesn't make any sense. And I need to own the fact that I'm making an illogical choice. People think, they say another very often used expression, you made me angry. Excuse me, I got angry. You did whatever you did. I got angry. This is what I have to do. I have to own. I got angry all by myself. Nothing to do with you. We think somebody else made me get angry. That means I've given over my power to you. What am I doing? Giving my power to you. That doesn't make any sense. If I get angry, I have to take responsibility, assume responsibility, and I am accountable to myself. I cannot say, it's your fault that I got angry. And that You know, just doing that alone is going to shift so much of the social attitudes that are going on, because everybody wants to blame somebody else for their own behavior.
Say, for example, temptations are your Achilles heel. How do you deal with it?
Well, it means you've got an addiction, isn't it?
Okay.
And you have to say, you know, I bought this thing because I was tempted. It's not the fault of that beautiful thing. It's I gave in to my own weakness, and I don't have to. You know, we're wanting to say this is a choice. Once you shift it from, oh, I'm so weak that it's not my problem, it's somebody else's problem or the object problem. No, I chose to be weak. What does that say about me? I don't have any self-respect. So owning it causes the self, causes the conscience to wake up. Because when you make these excuses or you lay blame on an object or a person that, oh, you made me weak, that's dishonest, you see. If I have an addiction, and because of the addiction, I do something against my conscience, and I say it's the fault of the addiction isn't somebody who does something, it's me. You know, and I am not doing anything about my weakness. And what this course is saying is, choice is in your hands. You do it, you know. And if you don't have enough strength, turn your attention to the source of strength and get some, because there is nothing to stop you other than laziness.
You mentioned something that I found quite curious in the third paragraph of page 25, which reads as follows: the concept of values is essentially neutral. What does that mean?
What it means is we're taking it out of the right and wrong, the good and bad, and saying, okay, a value is such and such. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. You know, take this object here. It has a certain value, you can buy it for a certain price, that's its value. If somebody wants it and it's very rare, the value goes up because of scarcity. But when you use the word principle instead of value, it kind of causes you to, I think, own it a little bit more. When you say, it is my principle to act in a responsible way, and then I start acting irresponsibly, that means I'm a hypocrite, you see. And I can't blame anybody else for it. All I can do is say, I'm a hypocrite, let me stop. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, actually it does. It's quite practical, what you just said. But however, it takes an exceptional person to admit to their own weaknesses.
Yes. And I think a general kind of ego or arrogance or false ego is what is putting perhaps all of us in a sort of denial, and we don't want to admit that all of these weaknesses is not them out there, it starts with me. And it's a choice. If we say, I don't have any choice, I'm weak, okay, then take down the arrogance, get some humility, because then only you'll start to do the work. The arrogance and the denial go together, and this is where it's connected with addiction, which is all about arrogance and denial. Oh, I am not as bad as so-and-so, look, they're worse than me, therefore I'm okay. Comparison is another device whereby people avoid taking responsibility and avoid saying, I'm choosing to be bad, or I'm choosing to be weak, because they don't have to choose that. So getting a person to admit that I chose makes us in general, I think, much more honest about where we are. And then we would have to, I think, spend more attention on shoring up our weaknesses by taking strength from a spiritual source.
Okay. I'd now like to read to you a paragraph from the bottom of page 25, where there is no clear definition, an activity or policy that may not be moral or ethical can be cleverly described as a value in order to justify its application. This causes moral confusion, and actions contrary to the spirit and meaning of values are then performed. Theoretically that makes sense, but I would like you to give the viewer a practical example of what you mean.
You may have a gender bias, for example, and the bias will not be overt. It'll be hidden in there. And then you can do something which is coming out of gender bias, and then you will point to that other gender and saying, well, they're like this, and that's why there's a problem. But really, it's your bias that is making the problem. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or you may say, okay, cultural bias. You start to generalize, all people from this culture, they are like that, and that's why there's a problem. And you're hiding the fact that you're not looking at the actual situation, the actual individuals. You're covering it with a generalization. A lot of people do this. It's very subtle.
Yeah. When I first read this, I thought of racism as being a classic example.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You can be very covert about it, but you still have it inside.
Yeah. There was an interesting question that was asked in United States recently, where somebody was making a speech saying, is there anyone who would like to be treated as a person of color in America? And nobody raised their hand. And then the speaker said, well, it proves that there is a racial bias, because if there wasn't, you'd be raising your hands. That was quite a good way to actually put the finger on it, you see. And these things are so subtle that it becomes difficult for a regular person to have that skill to put the finger on the problem. And so if there are people who can articulate it and who do put the skill, then they can make the person think. I didn't raise my hand. Why didn't I raise my hand? To what extent am I a hypocrite? Do I want to be a hypocrite? Do I dislike hypocrites? I can't dislike hypocrites and be a hypocrite. Double standards. And if you have double standards and you don't see it, you'll keep them going. And this is why I give a lot of attention to conscience, because it's only when the conscience is really working well that you will notice when you are going against your own espoused values.
I was wondering whether each one of us is born with a barometer of a value barometer, a virtue barometer, principles. Are we born with a barometer?
I think in a way it's good to call it a barometer, because it's going to be indicating up or down. But my problem is that when people have for a long period of time regularly been acting against their conscience, that instrument loses functionality and it gets really fuzzy, or it doesn't show you the level that you want it to do. When you have a machine that doesn't work, you're forced to ask somebody else for their evaluation, and then you've given away your power. which means you've given away your responsibility. Now, you do the action, you're accountable, you will pay, but you say, oh, it was somebody else's fault. But when your account comes up for settlement, the judge will say, I'm sorry, you did the action. You can't say, oh, I was, inspired by somebody else to do this. You have a choice.
Is there a reference point that we all have in order to establish values?
I would say that there is, and the reference point, we can say there may be more than one reference point. Any individual who lives by their conscience is a reference point for others.
That is so beautiful. That's very, very beautiful. One would think that your conscience is just an internal indicator of how you should behave, but to have that power to influence others, it makes that person very powerful.
You see, we can't blame people for having eroded their conscience, but if we can say, okay, here is 2 or 3 or whatever great souls in this world, check yourself against this person as an example, and in this situation this person handles themselves this way, how do you handle yourself? And I think that people, even subconsciously, are on the lookout for role models that they can model themselves on. Nowadays the role models tend to be footballers and celebrities, and they are not displaying the kind of moral conscience that here we're talking about. And those role models in a way fail people because they're held up as important people, and they behave atrociously in certain cases, and then somebody will say, well, this person did this, so I can also. And that creates moral confusion. So I think highlighting individuals who are of that caliber is useful for somebody who's unclear. But I think a lot of people, they have a conscience. They know they go against it. When I'm doing talks, I will very often ask people, how many times a day do you go against your conscience? And the average is 6 or 7 times a day in any group of people. You see, but no one's ever asked them that question before. And it's only when you have to look at such a question and try to give an honest answer that you then find that there's a discrepancy between what you claim to be and what you actually are. And this will activate the conscience. And so we want to try and do all sorts of things to activate it. Because if you can be internally monitoring yourself, you're not worried about the shoulds and the external moral authorities and so on. They have much less value, much less importance, much less utility when you're operating from within. And this is what I'm trying to encourage.
Okay. I want more details on that, but I have a feeling you're going to answer this question in forthcoming episodes. I was struck by the quote that you had put into your book, Sister Denise, on page 25, a quote by Rajyogini B.K. Daddy Janki, who is currently the administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris. It reads as follows: values are the treasures of life, making us wealthy and rich. Values are friends, bringing happiness. That's very lovely. I never thought of a value as a friend. A life filled with values is a life of self-respect and dignity. The soul is able to come closer to God, and life becomes real and meaningful. Values bring independence and freedom, expand our capacity to be self-sufficient, and protect us from external influences. This was very beautiful, Sister Denise, because I never thought of values as being friends. And Daddy Janki puts it in such a beautiful way. Your values are your friends. which makes, by definition, your vices and your dark side your enemies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so very profound way of putting it, and a lot of food for thought.
Indeed. When you act according to those principles, the consequences of your actions are positive. When you act according to the dark side, you pay. And people don't like to pay. And they will say, who made me pay this vice, this weakness? You see, not a friend.
I am of the view that because there's a time lapse between the action and the punishment, people cannot join the dots and realize they don't have a problem, they are the problem.
Sometimes a person will, intuitively come out with the statement, what did I do to deserve this? And I would say, well, sit down with yourself, think for a while, and you will see exactly what you did to deserve this. And then you can't blame fate or something like that. You can see that you are responsible. You make your bed, you lie in it.
Okay, unfortunately we have to end on this note. So Sister Denise has taken us through something called the concept of values. Nothing that is shared in this series is theory. Everything is practical. And so how much of time and energy are you investing in yourself to become somebody of a principle? Expressions that Sister Denise used in today's show, the concepts that she shared, the wisdom that she shared is really worth listening to once again, so that you can ask yourself the question, am I the person that I would like to be? I think that's what stayed with me today. Am I the person that I would like to be? Sister Denise, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And it was great to have all of you with us again. I hope to see you again soon for the forthcoming episode. Take care. Good day to you.